Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3, testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. We are on the air. This is Thesis.
I mean, the Persian Empire's army was so big, they would dry out the rivers. But Herodotus says that in his book. When all my life, growing up, through the 80s, all I remember being taught at school is that we should be colorblind. But now it seems like these people that call themselves progressives are looking back past the civil rights to where now I should care about what skin color I am or the other person is. Educate yourself, open your eyes. Don't be led around like sheep or cattle.
Government will always push its boundaries, no matter who is in charge.
Today's show, I wanted to talk about a little bit about like legalization and things like that. When markets get saturated, only the strong survive.
We see the crossover from what religion teaches us about behaviors, and we can see the proof in the science.
I'm not scared of the virus. I'm not scared of the pandemic. You know why? Because I know that there's something greater than all of this.
This is Thesis. Everything is everything. I am your host, Jay Marie.
3, 2, 1, we are on the air. This is Thesis. Everything is everything. I am your host, Jay Marie. How's it going out there, folks? Hope you're doing well. Thank you for showing up and hanging out with us today. Coming to you live from Zombie Land. Yes, sir. Well, I want to thank you guys for checking in on us today, coming in and hanging out with us today. I hope you find yourself well and safe and healthy. It was, I actually took me an extra week to come back on here with you guys. I got a little busy last week, so it got in the way to, put in a show out last weekend. But it gave me an extra week to tighten up, the thought process on our next topic. Little housekeeping beforehand. I want to welcome all of our new listeners. Thank you for returning back to our show and checking out our episodes. Our numbers are growing real nicely, real rapidly. So I really do appreciate all you new listeners, and also want to mention that we do have a YouTube channel that has our shows on there, a lot of clips, motivational clips, and I also have a lot of other cultural films that I do. I call it Thesis Films, so you might want to go over there and subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm also now on Twitter. I'm not too active on there, but we got a few things, but I'm real active on the Facebook. So all the links to all of that are in the show notes. So we would like for you to join us over there also. So when we are not here on the podcast, on the audio side, we are definitely over being active on the socials and on the video side also. So we'd like for you to do that. And don't forget to hit the subscribe on Spotify and on our videos, and whatever that really helps out the algorithm. All right, so let's go ahead and jump right in. So one of the things that I try to do here is look at current situations of things that are happening around us in our society, right, in our nation, and I try to find ways to talk about them indirectly. But in a way that we can all understand, in a way that anyone listening would be able to understand the message and that I'm trying to get at. And I've tried my best to talk about these political issues in a neutral, in a generic way, in a generic sense, where I'm not mentioning specific parties, or sometimes we have to, sometimes we might have to, but where we're talking about these things in a general, generic sense, because these things translate across time, across political systems, and across political parties and races and all kinds of things, right? So these stories can be told about things that happen, let's say things that are going on now, whenever you're listening to us, things that are going on now, things that have happened in the past, and things that will happen again in the future, because history is filled with examples of things that we can look to when it comes to political systems, methods, this and that, right? Um, so so one of um, the thing that we are going to talk about is totalitarianism, authoritarianism. You know, sort of like the way it is described in the book 1984. We hear the term Orwellian, you know, dystopian. We hear these terms a lot. George Orwell wrote the book 1984, Animal Farm. It's one of our, you know, go-to writers here. As the and in the book 1984, it talks about a world where the government, right, the state is very powerful. It's powerful over the people and what they think and what they do and all kind, you know, over basically every aspect of society. You know, they spy on their citizenry and all these things, right? So in 1984, it's like we call it a dystopian future. Um, we're not going to go through the book itself like a book report. No, we're gonna look at the authoritarian system that they live and rule are ruled by, right? In INGSOC, English Socialism, which is the name of the political party in that world that rules over the people of this world, right? It's called Oceania, but those things aren't we're not we don't really, you know, they're not as important as we're going to go and look at what the totalitarian state does in the book and try to find comparisons or similarities between things that we see in society or have seen in society. Because, again, history is filled with examples, that things that we can look back to. The totalitarian state, when we look at, for instance, like Nazi Germany, the Soviet Union, Mao's China, North Korea. You know, these political systems, they they live and rule off of fear and control, and they empower themselves by spying on their citizenry and feeding them misinformation and lying to them. And so they use methods to kind of have a stranglehold over the populace. You know, living in a free society, when we think uh, like some of these ideas of that described in the book, or even some of the things that have happened in history, they almost sound like far-fetched fantasy. Like how could these things are how are these things even possible in modern society? You know, secret police or taps, you know, wiretaps, and the government listening into your conversations and all these things. How could that possibly happen in a free Western society? Now, although the story is considered a fiction because there is no place called Oceania and these things never really happened, about 80% of what is in the story actually has happened, but in other instances and situations in Yugoslavia and the Soviet Union and in China and all these different places, some of these things have happened. You know, Orwell went off of what he knew because he was around in the time of the Nazis and the Soviet Revolution. So he can see in his modern time these things that were happening right before his eyes. Now he compiled these things into a fictional story, quote unquote. But we can, other than the small parts of where the story takes place and stuff like that, these things are actually how they happen. The totalitarian, authoritarian state is a centralized apparatus that controls all aspects of life. Who you can be friends with, where you work, what you watch, what you eat, what you can do, what you can say, what you can't say. All that power is coming from a centralized authority. They normally use force where possible to attain power. They will arrest people, they will torture people, you know, They will put fear into the people, so that they won't stand up or fight back or push back against these ever intruding policies, let's say, of the state. They destroy civil and economic liberties. They smother the culture. They keep citizens under mass surveillance. There's psychological warfare, constant propaganda, mass imprisonment, which finally leads to mass murder. These these stages have been shown to us. It's happened before in the Nazi state, in the in Germany. It's happened before in the Soviet states. It's happened before in many places. When the population, when the citizenry has been bombarded, constantly bombarded with lies over many many years, it makes it very difficult for the citizen to figure out what the truth is. With mass media and newspapers and what we hear from our leaders and stuff, it's very hard to figure out truth from fiction. And a totalitarian state relies on the ignorance of the people. It depends on the ignorance of the people, and it will do anything and everything in its power to keep the people ignorant. Uh, Information on the citizen, on what they're thinking, on what they're doing, is key. That's a vital component of knowing who is going to step out of line. Seeing, what they're thinking and what they're saying to their friends. Me, the state, the totalitarian state, will be able to crush any opposition before it even begins. Like during the Revolutionary War, the men would gather in the pubs, in Boston and in Philadelphia, and that's where people would talk together, and ideas would come together in the pubs, in the bars, in private clubs and stuff like that. People will come together and be able to talk ideas out, and the king did not, once they started acting up, right? The colonists. The king sent his troops over and put them inside people's stores, inside people's pubs, homes, like spy. So now there's a. So think about it. You're in your pub where we used to all be able to talk and shoot the shit about. Hey, maybe this thing that the king is doing, the thing that the president is doing, the thing that our leaders are doing, we don't like it, but we're here, we're talking, we're drinking, we're shooting the shit. But now there's a guard there, a king's guard that reports directly to the king, and he has orders to listen for anybody that's gonna step out of line or saying things that shouldn't be said. That was one of the that's one of many reasons, but that was one of the reasons of for the Revolutionary War back in the colony times, is because the crown had, we could call them spies or whatever, but they had eyes and ears inside people's homes and bars and businesses everywhere. So there was no privacy from the state. In the Soviet Union, um, they had the secret police. Uh, they had neighbors and people that snitched on each other. Some people, to find favor with the party, they would snitch out their neighbors and their friends and make up lies about whatever. Because in a system like this, they don't care about the truth. The truth doesn't matter. The truth does not matter. Because in a system like this, they don't care about the truth. The truth doesn't matter. What matters is the party. What matters is what is their power over the individual. That's what matters. And that people stay in line is the most important part for them. And they will crush anyone. They will crush anything that even has a whiff of a revolutionary thought or anti-revolutionary thought, because the revolution has already been won. When they're in power, the revolution was already won. So they call anyone who goes up against their power, against the state, they call them anti-revolutionaries. So they're looking for anti-revolutionary behavior. They make laws against anti-revolutionary behavior. Anyone speaking out of line, 10 years in the gulags. With so much surveillance, it kind of induces paranoia with the people, because the people don't know who it's safe to talk around, or because you might say something wrong. Like, I don't know why I'm gonna say something wrong. It's gonna offend somebody, and then they're gonna run to the to the authorities and say, this person said so and so, against our way of thinking, against the party, against the state, you know against what we do. They're not thinking right. You might not be thinking right. Wrong think, double think, new speak, all these things. You know you get punished because you don't think the proper way. The party tells you what is correct. The state, the party, the authoritarians tell you what to think, what to like, what is right, what is wrong. They tell you what to believe, what not to believe. It's like there's a loss of logic. After so many years of being bombarded with lies and contradictions, people lose the ability for logic because nothing makes sense. And that's the way it's supposed to be, because nothing is supposed to make sense. The only thing that's supposed to make sense is the party and what they want. Now, technology is the tool. Technology can be the tool of the authoritarian. You know, I know people like Lenin and Stalin and Mao. They could only wish for the technologies that we have today. But they would put wiretaps in apartments. They would put radio signals and microphones in homes and hallways and businesses. They would actually do that, like a phone line, but running straight to their switchboard. Now, in 1984, each citizen has a telescreen, what is called a telescreen, on their wall. It 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 shows it has messages, on there from the state. They call it Big Brother. Big Brother is the face of the party. You know, let's imagine the president's face or something, right? Big Brother is always watching. The telescreens would show programming, would show government programming, propaganda, news reports, but it will also look at you. It shows you, it transmits, but it also receives. So it can see you, and it calls the citizens, reads to attention, and come to the telescreen. What are you doing? And it's listening. It has a microphone, and it can see you. And these telescreens are not just in the homes of the people. Every home of everybody. They are in the city streets, on the corners, up on the poles, in businesses, in the lobbies of buildings and hotels and businesses. There's telescreens everywhere that all connect back to the switchboard of the state, of Big Brother. And they're all watching and listening and looking for anyone who's who has who's not thinking right, who might step out of line. They even look at facial expressions when the news comes on or the state media comes on to say, the message from Big Brother. They're looking at your facial expressions to see if if you make a wrong face, a grimace of discontent, and when they do notice people who don't come to the screen when called, that do things out of, trying to hide from the screen, make wrong facial expressions, say the wrong things, they'll get a knock at the door. Door get kicked in, and you will get taken away by the secret police to the ministry of love, where they're gonna love you. They love you so much because how can you think that way? Come on. I'm gonna help you think correctly. We're gonna love you and you're gonna think correctly. That's what they do at the ministry of love. They're gonna torture you. They're gonna lock you up in the gulags. And they're gonna torture you, and they're gonna intimidate you, and they're gonna interrogate you. And until you tell them what they want to hear. Because you can't step out of line. You can't think that way. You are not allowed to think that way. You are not allowed to spread the lies that you have been spreading that go against the party, that go against Big Brother. You are not allowed to do that. You will be dealt with. You will be made to understand that the party has the final say. What do you know? What do you know? You're not educated. You don't have degrees. You're just a rube. You're just a plebe. A factory worker. A farmer. You don't know what to think. We tell you what to think. We will show you how to think. We will take over the public school systems and put our people in there to show your kids how to think. Young minds are very impressionable. Therefore, the state knows that it needs to invest in the young minds of the children so they will not grow up to be like their rube parents who believe in some hokey pokey magic from who knows when, that things used to be better back in the day. No, they weren't better back in the day. They are better now because we say so. We declare what is true. The party declares what is true through our operatives in the media, in politics, in Hollywood. They're with the party. They're in line. How do you think they become so successful? Very rarely will one of those people step out of line because they know the value of being in line with Big Brother. Every record has been destroyed. Every book has been rewritten. Every picture repainted. Every statue torn down or renamed. Nothing exists except an endless present time in which the party is always right. Dates don't mean anything. Altered. There is no contradiction to the party ever. And if you do try to contradict the party, you will be appropriately handled because you can't think certain things. It's a new world. The past is no longer. The past is no more. We don't live there no more. We live in this new world. What happens today? Today, not the past. Now. What's happening now is the real world. Confusing propaganda, conflicting reports, blatant lies are pumped in are pumped out to the general public. Government reports, mass media, constantly altering reality, constantly altering what is actually happening, and revisiting what has already actually happened. So the lie just continues, and the people forget. They've been so bombarded um, with lies and contradictions that they can't even figure out what is true. They can't even remember what was said a week ago, 2 weeks ago, much less 2 years ago. That's why the state knows that it can lie. It can lie because it knows that the people aren't interested. The people are busy. The people are doing other things. They have them struggling at home, at work, in the factories, in the businesses, in society. They're too busy with all these things to even be able to see what exactly is going on. And they have been so demoralized over so many years from public schooling that they don't even know what the truth is. History has been erased. History has been changed. Every time there's something different, pointing back to the history of pointing back to the history and saying that this didn't happen, this happened. Always changing. It's always in a constant flux. There's never nothing solid. What the party understands, and but what you don't understand, because they're smarter than the people, right? They got degrees, they're leaders, they're in positions of power. What they understand, but you, the rube, the people, will never understand, is that enslavement is liberation. Censoring information is actually protecting the truth. The state censors information to protect the truth. The destruction of the economy is actually the development of the economy. Things just don't make any sense. Yet this is the words that you will hear from the lips of the propagandist on the telescreen day after day, coming on the screen, pushing these narratives over and over and over. And don't when you catch them in a lie, you really can't prove that you did, because they've changed everything. In 1984, one of the characters, well, the main character, Winston, he works at the Ministry of what was it? The Ministry of Truth. Which what they do is, when you kind of look at the description of what he does, it's kind of like almost a government official. Of course, he's a party member, uh, but he kind of looks like he works in a records department, because he's constantly changing records. Like, he'll go back to something that happened 5 years ago and pull the file and change it or erase it. Oh, this person erased people's names or whatever. They had a chute that goes into the furnace that's called the memory hole. So things that files and stuff that just needed to be erased. Oh no, that person never existed. This thing never happened. That riot, that insurrection, that box of whatever never happened, right? These things never happened. It's almost like a memory hole. They get hidden in the back file somewhere, but in the book they get burned and the file goes away. So hold on. Somebody's looking for the mass grave of the whatever, the mass something that happened. They start looking through the file. It doesn't exist anymore. So if the file isn't there, if the book got erased, if the book got thrown out, and these things, it's like if they never happened. And the state uses that power, that type of power, in whatever instance that it can, wherever it can, for political reasons or for whatever reasons. They can go back and make things disappear. They can make people disappear. They can make files disappear. When they when they constantly lie, when the state constantly lies, how can you prove otherwise if everything has always been a lie? What do we point to what is true? When does the truth begin? How far back does the lie begin? Being able to think two things at the same time. In the book, they call it double think, like being able to two two opposing ideas, believing them at the same time. They go with the example of 2 plus 2 equals 5 because the party said so. They torture you until you say 2 plus 2 is 5. The party decides what is true. And remember, the party is not, it's not just about who's in front of us in the state, who's running the state, but they have branches and arms of the state. The media, mass media, is a branch of the state because they have their propaganda on there constantly. The state does its orders and its uh, decrees through the media, which comes out on the telescreens that's inside of everyone's home. They decree to lock your doors, to not go outside. An authoritarian state needs to have a permanent class of society that is poor, that is ignorant, that is broken and demoralized. As long as they have that, they will attain power and retain power and hold on to the power for long periods of time because power corrupts. And once a a state, a totalitarian state, uh, becomes, then they will do anything and everything in their power to withhold, to keep that power. And that means going against people who are thinking different than what the state declares as proper. They will come after professors. They will come after lawyers and doctors, other members of the state who don't fall in line. They watch everybody all the time. Telescreens everywhere, microphones everywhere, spies everywhere, in every department, in every store, in every hallway, in every school. Don't think wrong because there's spies everywhere. And the thought police is looking for anyone who steps out of line. Something interesting about the zebras is their color is unique. It doesn't their colors don't camouflage them against nature, because nature is green and there's these colors, brown and light tan. There's these colors in nature that the zebra that so what the colors of the zebra does, it actually camouflages them against the herd. So so they all look the same, confusing when they're all running around. You can't tell them apart. So you pick one and, oh, next thing you know, where'd he go? Because then the colors are exactly the same. So that's how they're protected, the zebras. But if you were to paint a mark on one of them, or put, let's say, like a coat or something tied around one of them to distinguish them against the others, they will easily become the target of the prey, because they stand out of the crowd. So the predator is easier to focuses in on the one that stands out of the crowd. That's why they are all camouflaged the way against each other. They're camouflaged against the herd. So so like Big Brother, right, is always looking. In the story, but the state is always looking for someone who's gonna get out of line, constantly, constantly. In the Soviet Union, we read in the Gulag Archipelago that the state had become so corrupt that they actually had uh, quotas on how many traitors you were supposed to find every week. You know how many people out there that were speaking against the party. They had quotas. Your department of city of so and so, department of so and so, secret police so and so. You need to bring us 20 traitors every week. So when there weren't actually traitors, conspirators, whatever, they would make them up. They'll find somebody and just force them into confessions. No, you are a traitor. Tell us what you were planning. I wasn't planning nothing. Crack you in the face, burn your fingers, burn your face, whatever, cigarettes, malnutrition, whatever. Tell us your plan until you agree, until you confess. That's not that's not a movie. That's not from a movie. That really happened in the Soviet Union. So the state becomes so corrupt that it doesn't care about the truth. Truth doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is what the state says. That's the only thing that matters. The state actually also in 1984, but the totalitarian state, it's like a sponsors hate. They want people angry. They want them mad, but at the thing that they point to. So so what the state does in 1984 is it's always there's always these wars. There's always threat of war. There's always a war going on with somebody, and then before you know it, no, it's with these people. So it's like nobody even knows what these wars are all about, but there's always war, the threat of war, and people are always scared. And the state, has what they call a 2 minutes of rage every day, where they show the enemies on the TV screens, on the telescreens, and the people scream and anger and shout, and everybody's just screaming and angry at the enemy. The state is telling us this is the enemy. This is the person that we're supposed to hate today. This is the person that's attacking us. This is our enemy. 2 minutes of hate, 2 minutes of rage, day of rage. State sponsored rage. In Germany and in the Soviet Union, in Italy, they had groups that were state sponsored that would go around and beat people up. They had the brown shirts and the black shirts. They would go around and beat up people and cause ruckus and havoc amongst churches and places where people were gathering together to maybe talk about what's going on in the state. Hey, look at what's going on in the government. Let's get together and communicate. And here comes these men all wearing, not a specific uniform, but all wearing similar colors, black or brown, as they and coming to beat people up and intimidate them and show them that they're thinking wrong. Those were state sponsored. Those groups belonged to the state. They worked for Germany, the party. They worked for the Nazi party. The other the brown shirts, the black shirts, they worked for Mussolini. The secret police, in Soviet, those are all state sponsored. They would they would they would go out, and if the state says, hey, go, this neighborhood of these Jewish people or these other ethnic groups, and go, and because they're not thinking properly with the state, go and rough them up, go and burn their places down, go and show them, how who's really the boss. State sponsored, because there's spies. They in 1984, they had spies everywhere, just waiting and looking to entrap somebody. To entrap somebody in something, conspiracy of, kidnapping a governor or taking over the country. They would entrap people into these things because that's how spies and the secret police and authoritarian, totalitarian systems. That's how they work. They work and they survive off of power and fear. And these are the tactics that they use and that have been used, for as long as probably that we can remember. There's always been spies. Then with the advent of technology and recording devices, then they started putting recording devices in apartment buildings and police stations and everywhere to hear and listen to see who's stepping out of line. Who do we got to look out for? They give no hope to the people. They lie and constantly bombard them with contradictions about what's going on in society. People don't even know who to trust or who to believe. They don't even trust in their own officials. Demoralization across the board. No one has the guts to stand up. Very few, very few. And some that do get taken away by the secret police for stepping out of line. Will get knocked off of social media, will get shut down, where you can't speak publicly, where you can't address officials publicly. The state has a lot of power. They try to erase individuals who step out of line because for too long they've been getting their way. For too long, people have been sitting back. For too long, we've been just sitting back and watching these authoritarians take over our schools, take over our local governments, take over our state governments, our national governments, take over our universities, our police departments. For too long, we just sat back and said nothing. And now, when people are standing up, the state doesn't like it. And it will do what it needs to do to silence those voices that are no longer camouflaged against the herd. They're easier to target. When you don't think the way the state does, you're easier to find. Is there a way to exist within the herd and also be a voice or a light against the darkness that exists in, within, and around the herd without being too noticeable, without standing out too much? Is there a way? Is there ways to speak? Is there ways to produce film? Is there ways to produce music that goes against the the flow of what the state wants, but is not as direct to where their machines and their algorithms and their prying ears and eyes won't really be able to detect it because they're constantly listening, right? In 1984, they constantly listen, constantly watch every movement, every motion, everything you say, and everything you do. So, how does one camouflage himself amongst the herd to be able to, you know, um, accomplish goals, certain goals, maybe accomplish certain change, planting seeds in others amongst the herd that'll awaken them to what the state is doing and has been doing and is constantly doing and will constantly do until we, the people, get our hands back on the reins and the grip of the steering wheel of where this nation is supposed to go. We've sat back for too long. We've been we've been philosophically arming ourselves, educationally arming ourselves for the battle that is here now. We can look to authors like Orwell and books like 1984. We can also look to the Gulag Archipelago to give us these clues and examples. It's like the playbook of the enemy. What is it that they do? How do they do it? Why do they do it? We need to know if we are to succeed in a battle against them. We need to know the enemy. Song Tzu, you need to know your enemy. And the enemy is totalitarianism. That's the enemy. We are free men. We are free men and women. Our enemy, the enemy of freedom, is enslavement. Total enslavement of what our thoughts are, on what we do, on what we can eat, on what we can drive, and where we can go. Totalitarianism is the enemy of freedom. And we must do everything possible, everything in our power, everything that we can possibly find our way to doing to stop that from happening. Because history shows us what happens. It's not a secret. It's not a secret what happens when the totalitarian, when the authoritarian gets his way. There's nothing but pain and suffering for the people forever and ever. All right? All right. All right. I think we'll just leave it there. Ah, dang it, man. I thank you. I appreciate that. I hope you like that. I hope you stayed all the way through. And if you did, I really appreciate it. I've been on this. I've been studying. I just Jesus. I jumped into this. And I've been going. I've been studying the 1984 book for about 2 weeks. 2 weeks now, and kind of like I did with Colosio, I needed to know it in and out, but the message had to be told in a specific way because this wasn't a book report. So I hope I had 4 pages of notes. I had 4 pages of notes, and I did look down. I did look at them for a little bit, but you know, I wanted this. I think we did okay. I think we did all right. So let's see. Woo, I love it. All right, people. Well, if you've never heard audiobook 1984, read it, I say, you might find it real interesting. There's also a couple of movies out there. It's good to read it's good to either read or audiobook first and then watch the movie to kind of get a little, because the pictures really help describe what's going on in the book. But as you can see, we didn't really delve too much into the book, more into what the power of the state was doing, which was what my focus was going to be about. It's that, society changes, leaders come and go, and they bring their political ideals with them. We are free men. We come from Western ideals of freedom and liberty, and these ideals of enslavement by the state power is just very, very. It's not familiar to us, because we come from a place where ideals of free men are what guide us in our everyday lives. So we must be educated and prepared for the fight that is occurring, and the fight that will continue to occur. So we need to be vigilant. All right, guys. Well, I hope you enjoyed our message, and I hope you enjoyed the show. And if you did, please tell your friends. Please hit the subscribe button on YouTube, on Spotify, wherever you're listening to us. Follow us on Facebook or Twitter. All the links are in the description. I'm working on some things. Interview coming up for sure. I said it. Hey, I gotta make a fat envelope with money. It's gonna cost some bread, but it's okay though. It's gonna be worth it. Uh, that's coming up very soon. So then I'm not gonna say it's coming up very soon. Okay, so that might even be the next episode. So stay tuned. What else? That's it. Folks, in the meantime, I want you to, till we see each other again, I want you to stay safe, stay healthy, and continue on the path that we are on. That's it. I'm not going to go on and on. 1984, George Orwell, Animal Farm, some good books that really show, that really give us a description of what's going on in these authoritarian states. So jump in that. All right, guys. Love you. Stay safe. I will see you guys soon. Peace out, folks.
This is Thesis.